And we're live. Hello, and
Hello.
welcome to the very late live stream discussing The Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy 1. How are we both?
We are lovely, as always.
Good.
Wonderful. You may notice James has gone under a slight transformation today.
Yeah.
I'm joined, as always, by the lovely Abby. And James, do you want to introduce yourself as the new human being you have become?
I have become Amberine. I don't know if I'm meant to offer more information.
You can offer as much or as little as you like.
I am a photographer / 3D person, and I do
a 3D person, my favorite kind.
Yeah, I made 3D things, but I haven't done it in a while, so I don't know if I count as one anymore. But you know,
that's cool. That's cool. And so what about in terms of like Marvel movies? Have you been watching since you were very little? Is it more recent?
I watched ones when they came out on VHS and my mum bought them for me.
Nice.
And then I loved Andrew Garfield, so I watched those ones as soon as they came out. And then I think from Iron Man, I've been watching them as they came out every time.
Dude, that's commitment. Okay.
I'm fully embracing the nerd.
Wonderful. So in this live stream, in the build-up to Infinity War, which is in like, I don't know, 2 weeks, we're about halfway through the MCU.
Yeah, it's going really well so far, guys.
Yeah, let's take us back 4 years ago to 2014 with the release of Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier. So this is 2 movies have passed since the Avengers, and we've caught up with Iron Man, we've caught up with Thor. Now we're going to see what the Sentinel of Liberty himself has been doing with his new life in the present. Ibby, do you want to give us a brief rundown?
I mean, this is the time that we're all so shook that Nazis were in the White House, and now fast forward 4 years and we're like, yeah, okay, that happened. This movie was quite predictive of the future. It's also arguably probably one of the best movies of the MCU. I would definitely say it's the best of phase 2. I enjoy it a lot. I've seen it a lot of times, and yeah, it's good, solid.
Nice. Nice little rundown. Amberine, do you have any sort of brief summary of this film?
It's got my favorite character in it.
Nice.
That Winter Soldier. And it's a lot more spy than it is actiony.
Yeah.
Which I like. I like the switching up of genres, but some of my best friends hate it for that. But yeah, I like it.
Interesting. Okay. So if you can cast, both of you, if you can sort of cast your mind back to when you first watched this, and you'd seen the first Avenger and you'd seen the Avengers, what did you think, like, going into this film you might get, and then how were your expectations challenged?
Okay.
I think. Oh, do you want to
go?
I think I was expecting it to be, brighter because Captain America 1 was, and then I guess a bit cheesier. I was expecting.
I was expecting, because we just had like arguably 2 of the worst films of the MCU happen, and I was like, okay, this will be fun, it'll be fine. But like, I didn't love Captain America before this movie. Like the first Avenger, I've already said, it's not like I'm not that into it as a concept. This movie, I loved the change up of genres. I loved the ensemble casting. I really liked everything about this movie. Like, it was just very good generally, like all round. Like, I'll come to this later, but like the fight scenes are great. It's very much Avengers in terms of like how the fight scenes are shot, in that there are like a lot of tracking shots and stuff like that. I don't know, I just really enjoyed it generally. Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned how it was everything you just mentioned basically, and that's due to bringing in the Russo brothers, as we've seen with their continued work. The Russo brothers being Joe and Anthony, who directed this movie and are now directing pretty much the MCU. They did Civil War, they're doing Avengers, blah blah blah. And prior to this, people had a lot of doubts when this movie was announced, because going from Captain America: The First Avenger, which was not really anybody's favorite Phase 1 film because everyone loved Tony Stark and everyone loved Loki. And funnily enough, neither of those two characters were in Captain America.
Really?
I know, right? It was also a period piece during the war. It was kind of, it was Boy Scouty. And then in the Avengers, Steve didn't really stand out that much. And his costume looked doofy. So all of the kids were like, what? No, I like the guy with the big fists. And so going into this, everyone was expecting more of this attitude, more of this Boy Scout saves everyone and does truth, justice in the American way. And it was being directed by two men whose previous most notable work was Community, the sitcom, and You, Me and Dupree, the rom-com.
That has just baffled me completely. I'm like, oh my god, that's so people. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It was like, tonally, this movie is so different. And also, I wasn't expecting the social commentary aspect at all. Because the Avengers doesn't really do social commentary. I mean, the comics do. But in terms of, like, the first Avenger, I mean, like, it's pretty basic. You have the Nazis. And, I mean, we unpicked this earlier, but it's pretty black and white there. Whereas here, we have, like, this whole world of, like, politics. And this is also where you start to see the TV show's kind of directions as well, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. plays heavily off this one as well, and that goes in a lot of a darker direction. And I think it's one of the darkest movies of the, not darkest, but it's definitely tonally, it does stand out very much. And it's probably one of the ones I'd say that has the most social commentary, with now like Black Panther and Ragnarok kind of coming up behind, but
they still deal with social commentary of a different kind. So it's more commentary on imperialism and colonialism, whereas this one is very much a magnifying glass on the society in which we currently live, as opposed to the effects of a society which used to be on the one we live, if that makes sense. So yeah, this movie is very intentionally styled after the 1970s, 1980s spy thriller movies. So the biggest one to draw from would be The Manchurian Candidate, which I haven't seen, so I don't really know much exactly about what it is, but it was drawn heavily on in the original Winter Soldier comic storyline. It's the idea of a villain you don't know in a political system you do, mistaken identity, etc., etc. It's the very idea that the villain is already within, kind of thing. And to put that into a Captain America story, where Captain America, especially wartime Captain America, is very, the bad guy is clear, they're the Nazis, or the sometimes communists, if you want to be that weird.
We'll get to that, Greg. Get ready.
It's very jingoistic. It's very Captain America is your grandma's favorite, like Superman kind of thing. And then from in the universe, to take a character like Steve Rogers, who signed up for World War II because it was the right thing to do. He saved his friend Bucky because it was the right thing to do. He inspired loads and loads of people to rise up and win the war because it was the damn right thing to do. He's a paragon kind of character. And then to put him into this world, literally to force him into this world post-Avengers, where he doesn't really know what's going on. The fighting isn't done on the battlefield anymore. There's no trenches. There's just guns and shadow organizations. And he doesn't know who to trust. And you can see the effects it has on him. So should we talk about his character and how he's changed past the previous two films he was in?
Yeah. Firstly, I'd like to highlight something he says, where he says, this isn't freedom, this is fear, which is definitely one of the most central themes of this movie. And I think because he has come straight from basically the 1940s, where it is very clear cut, he struggles now that everything is not as clear cut anymore. But having him put his ideals onto that, and even as he's disillusioned throughout this movie, I still think that it makes it clear that there is a good and evil in this movie. Like, we are very clearly told that the shadow organizations are bad. Even though it has become increasingly complex, there is still a right thing to do. And him finding that is like important to the continuation of his character as being consistent.
Absolutely. Ambreen, do you have any ideas on this?
Yeah, I was thinking because in the first one, he's initially very trusting of like whoever's in charge. Like, he's happy to go along and be the poster boy for stuff. And then I think Avengers just is like, oh, no one has any idea what's happening. And then he's like, oh, they're all wrong. It's sort of a progressive sort of, yeah, like you said, disillusionment with stuff.
Definitely.
So I like that, how it arcs through the 3 movies and then goes completely, gets the wrong way in the 3rd one. But yeah, I think it's really interesting how they show the progression, like even throughout the movie itself, like starting with the this isn't
freedom, this is
fear. Yeah, and then just going through to the end where he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna just destroy the buildings and everything.
Exactly.
Fucking helicarriers, man.
So you mentioned the helicarriers. That's a really interesting point. So with phase 2, especially with these first 3 movies before we move on to more outlandish things, a big theme that Marvel seemed to want to push was the idea that it's all connected. So in a post-Avengers world, how does everything affect everyone? So how did we see it? Very briefly, Ibish, do you want to mention how we saw it in Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World? How is it all connected?
Okay, so we have kind of like, this is kind of something that actually bugs me, is the fact that they make it very central in the first Iron Man movie, and then they seem to, the 3rd Iron Man movie, sorry, and then they seem to tack that scene with Bruce on the edge, and I'm just like, where is everyone else? Why aren't they living in Avengers Tower? What's happening? But anyway, I mean, Thor: The Dark World, obviously, you have Loki dealing with Thor and Loki dealing with the consequences and the fallout in a very specific way, in like physical circumstances and their emotional relationship. But this one, I think, is the one that deals most head-on with S.H.I.E.L.D. and all the organizations we are fully introduced to in Avengers. Because, we're introduced to them beforehand in Iron Man, but they're still very much shadowy, and they come out into the light in Avengers, and then we kind of discover that there's even more in the shadows in this movie, and it does some great character work at the same time. And this movie, I think, really sets up the rest of Captain America movies were always very central, actually, but this one really sets up the end of phase 2 and the start of phase 3.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. This is, of course, the first time we see the Triskelion outside of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Doesn't last for long, does it?
It really doesn't last for long. But the very idea that S.H.I.E.L.D. could have a centralized headquarters, even though we don't meet many of the characters, it gives us the idea that they're out there and that the World Security Council consists of people rather than the faces on the screens we saw in the Avengers. We even start to put personality to these faces with Alexander Pierce, the main villain of this piece, with the, I can't remember his name, the Asian man who, that's literally all I remember about him, apart from the speech that he gives.
It is one of those lineups where they've gone, right, we've got a white man, we've got an Asian man, we've got a woman who is white, and someone else who I think is also white. Where they've basically gone, oh yeah, you can't be multiple things at once in this.
Yeah. And so you have the man with the beard who...
Oh yeah, sorry, the brown guy. That's who I meant. Yeah. I just called him white. Sorry.
That's fine. Who confronts Alexander Pierce, and so you get this idea that this is a council. There are people representing all kinds of countries. It isn't just the Avengers doing their own thing. And then we also have the idea that they're going on their own missions. So the beginning of this movie, aside from the very opening where Steve meets Sam, we have Steve Natasha and Brock Rumlow, a new character in this movie.
Some dude.
And some dude leading a team. So this team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, we've got 2 superheroes, and they're going on a mission to beat up a bad guy, do S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff. That's something that we weirdly didn't see before this movie.
That's what I love about this film. Is like, fine. I actually really like that Natasha moves over into Steve's universe, because I think it makes everything feel more connected. Like, if she just stuck around an Iron Man, that would be kind of weird.
Right.
But to see her actually doing active missions to S.H.I.E.L.D. is like really cool. This whole start scene is great. Oh my god, when he jumps out of the helicopter. Can I just say, because he does that also in the Avengers, and he has a parachute, and he doesn't in this one, and is that symbolic? Yes. But yeah, that whole scene is just really nice, and I wish we had more of that in the MCU, of just like, you know, teamwork.
You know, that scene reminds me of the first scene in Cars 2.
No!
It starts with like a spy scene. And it's on a boat.
Captain America 2, Cars 2, cinematic parallels.
No!
I'm sorry.
Perfect.
God.
So, are we going anywhere with the Cars 2 parallel?
No,
Cool.
that was just, it reminded me of that.
Cool. Do you want to salvage the railroad we were going on by talking about do you want to talk about Natasha? Let's talk about Natasha in this scene specifically.
Oh, all right.
Either of you.
Okay.
I think it does a good job of setting up the idea that she's not entirely certain of her own morals, kind of thing, and she's just like does the opposite of what Steve does in the rest of the movie, where she's just like, I guess I'm trusting the person in charge because I don't know right from wrong anymore, and I'm just hoping they do.
That's really interesting, actually, because it moves beyond her characterization in Iron Man 2, which was simply, I'm Nick Fury's sidekick. And then in The Avengers, where she's simply, I'm the morally grey Russian. And now we actually have someone who, in her own words, the truth isn't all things all the time to all people.
Mm-hmm.
It gives her some much needed characterization.
And it really fits with the tone of this movie.
Yes.
Like, generally, I feel like it makes her one of the central characters. Because, like, if she was just not doing... anyway.
Interestingly enough, if this was a classic 70s spy thriller, I'd argue that she'd be the main character.
Yeah.
Because Captain America, being a paragon figure, doesn't fit. He's not a spy. He's a soldier.
I mean, if we're taking this as like it being a 70s like James Bond movie, she's definitely the main character.
Oh yeah.
I'd pay to watch this.
And so to have her go alongside Steve provides really interesting dynamics. And the fact that they're
Steve
together
would be
so
like the outsider guy that the audience relate to, but she'd be the central. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I have thoughts about this movie.
Oh, here we go.
Namely, because you said Natasha, I'm going to use this as a lead-in. I really enjoy seeing her playing against stereotypes in this movie. In terms of like how she's aware of how people perceive her, and like, I mean, I wasn't a fan of that kiss scene, but now I've watched the whole thing again. I'm just like, okay, cool, whatever. And I like that there wasn't like, I like that she's trying to find him a date, and I feel like she's trying to be a friend to him, even before he asks her to be, and that makes her character more consistent throughout. Also, I really like her weaponry in this movie. Yes, good, electrocute people.
It's actually using her electricity consistently.
I know. I'm so excited. Anyway, okay, so my issue with this movie is that because, okay, I'm trying to work out how best to phrase this. I'm going to have to start with Bucky, if that's okay.
That's fine.
The issue of this film is it takes a very American worldview of like the Nazis and the communists, they're the same people, which is a very American kind of, oh, everyone we thought a war against, they're all the same people. When literally the Nazis killed like millions of communists. The Eastern Front is the most bloody area of the Second World War.
It's
So that's
literally the opposite end of the political spectrum.
Yeah, 100%. And even though Nazism is masquerading as socialism, and communism is also kind of masquerading as socialism, but it's still not the same thing. Like, you do things completely differently. And they also hated each other. So what I feel is failed to explain properly in this movie is why Bucky, who is supposedly rescued by the Russian Nazi guy, who is he German?
You mean the Swiss guy?
Oh, the Swiss guy, him.
Like, there's a line in this movie. There's a line in this movie where, oh yeah, Toby Jones is British, but Natasha says, Natasha calls him the German scientist who was recruited in Operation
and he goes,
Paperclip.
yeah, actually, I'm Swiss. Yeah.
Actually, Fraulein,
I'm Swiss. God. Right, that makes this worse because supposedly the Winter Soldier,
Natasha.
Winter Soldier, mansplaining Toby Jones. The Winter Soldier is historically to do with Russia, and like that whole program is a Russian program. So the association with Hydra thus becomes kind of problematic. And I mean, they do sort of explain it in Civil War, but I would argue it's not done well enough. And I went on a bit of a dig about Hydra and the Red Room and the Winter Soldier, trying to find links, and I dug up nothing from the comics and came up with some dodgy websites instead. So now the government are watching me. But yes, I would also say that, you know, that whole situation there is a bit problematic, but they do a good job of glossing over it. However, if they had gone in depth more on the Russian side of things, this would have been a really good opportunity to dig into the Red Room and Natasha's origins. Right. And to make her a proper superhero, because in this it's established that she's born in 1986 or something, and I'm just like, this would have been a great opportunity to reveal like the whole situation with the Red Room, and that would have made everything in Age of Ultron involving sterilization, because they're not sterilized, they're just like how do I phrase this properly, their bodies just flush things out because they're like eternally fixing. That made no sense, but if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. It's fine. That would have made more sense in Age of Ultron. So that makes her character inconsistent, because they could have just filled in some backstory, connected her more with Bucky. They do a kind of half-assed attempt, and then if they'd have done more with that, I don't know. I feel like it would be a stronger movie. The
biggest problem with this is the timeline.
Yes.
Because the biggest difference between Natasha in the movies and Natasha in the comics that you'll find nerds like us mentioning all the time is that Natasha is how old in this movie? Like, what
30 some, she's born in 86, so she's 30 something.
Right. Whereas how old is she in the comics?
I don't know, like 70.
Yeah.
And she doesn't remember 90% of this anyway, so it wouldn't matter. But
so the idea is that the Red Room had their own sort of super soldier serum that didn't really enhance you, it just slowed your aging down.
Yeah, so and it's used on 13 adoptive girls.
Yeah.
In Russia.
And this essentially is a really good cop-out for the writers, because it means they could use the same character over decades of stories. But what it does make interesting for Natasha is that she's seen war. She was involved in the Cold War. She was involved in early Red Room. And she has a history with the Winter Soldier, who is old because he keeps getting prison. Yes?
I've just realised, if she's born in 1986, there's no way she can be involved in the KGB as she claims.
Absolutely.
Because she'd have been, what, 7? And she says in the Avengers that she was like younger than 7 when she started, but like she still would not have been hugely involved. None of this now makes sense.
Yep. And it's simply because they didn't want to take the 5 minutes it would have taken, which I guess because this is such a tight movie, I can understand why they didn't want to do it, but it does open up a lot of weirdness. It could have made things so much more clear about how Hydra and the communists are not the same people. And if it just taken like, it literally be 5 minutes, and also it would connect Natasha and Bucky in a way that would like make the whole cycle of the movie tighter. It would also fix the biggest romance issue of the entire MCU.
Yeah.
Because it would fix the idea of Clint and Natasha.
Yeah.
It would fix the idea of Bruce and Natasha. Funny how all of this revolves around Natasha.
Well,
it would just fix
it's almost
everything.
like women are there just to be sex objects, isn't it?
Yeah. But it fixed it all because, and it's in the comics, but funnily enough, they found a winning formula, and it wasn't stuck to. So this winning formula is, you've got the Black Widow and you've got the Winter Soldier being high-ranking agents during the Cold War.
Yeah.
They have a history together. They're romantically involved.
They don't have to be romantically involved.
They don't have to be. But if you if you at least imply it,
yeah,
then you eliminate Brutasha. You say that Clintasha was not a thing that can still happen,
mm-hmm.
and you basically just fix all the shipping wars.
Didn't they reference like Bucky and Natasha in the third?
There's a line where Natasha is being throttled by Bucky,
and she
says,
the other day.
"You could at least remember me."
Yeah.
And that line would have had so much more weight, even not even romantically involved during the Cold War, but if they'd have been like partners in like missions, not if they'd have been mission partners,
that would make
that would have added so much more weight.
And then she would have a reason to be involved that isn't just her being like a pal of Steve's.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean that's Sam's reason for being involved. So it would be good if we could tie her to him as well.
Yeah. So this is a lot of if they did this, if they did that, if they stuck more closely, blah blah blah. But if we're taking this movie as it is, then I think we should move on to Sam. Sam is the major new character introduced in this film. He's the only one that really sticks around. What do we think about him as Sam Wilson the guy, as Falcon the superhero, and as Sam Wilson the teammate? Ambreen, do you want to begin?
I love him lots. I like the sort of the kind of humor he brings to it, and then also the pointing out that Captain America should get some mental help. Just because it's like, oh yeah, no, he's a veteran. He has been through a lot of shit, despite the fact that he is, you know, Captain America. And I'm trying to think of like Falcon as a superhero. What I think of him, I don't have much of an opinion of Falcon as a superhero.
Okay. Do you want to maybe think about why you don't have much an opinion of him? Does he not stand out as much?
No, he just kind of flies. That's his thing. He just flies and lands strategically.
Nice. What are your powers, Sam? Well, I've got these wings, and I'm really good at picking a place to land.
That's a solid power. It's better than Natasha's power, which is apparently nothing. What I do not like about the last scene of this movie is how like Sam is like grounded quite quickly. Natasha is like in disguise, and I'm just like, no, there should be a scene of the three superheroes doing the good fight, you know?
Yeah.
Also, why the fuck does she put that outfit on at the end and just give a massive side boob? What's the point of that?
Oh my! Right.
When did she have time to change?
And also, it never pays off because she never fights again.
No, exactly. What's the point? There is no point. Anyway, as with many things, it's just there for the tip. Okay, so I like Sam. I think he adds a lot of much needed comic relief to what would otherwise be a very dark movie. And I think he, Steve and Natasha all play off each other really well. And also we kind of see the beginning. Well, I mean, we don't really, but I like that Steve has like friends outside of the official Avengers.
Yeah.
It shows that he's integrating into the world.
Yeah, and also, I don't know, I like it. But then why does he disappear in Age of Ultron? Who knows?
In Age of Ultron,
don't tell me the explanation. I don't want to know.
He had a bullshit scene.
He was there, okay?
He was there.
He was there.
Yeah.
And then he just went off and did some stuff, didn't he? Along with the other black superhero.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. Because Because Joss Whedon didn't want to.
Joss Whedon is actually racist and a misogynist.
Perfect. We've got the scapegoat. Like me. No, wait.
Maybe he's also scared of water. Let's hope so.
Damn, we're live. We're live.
Sorry. I'd like to say that none of these things are factual, and don't sue me. Thanks.
Cool. So Sam Wilson. I was watching this movie with Emma, and she said that he feels like a very modern equivalent to Steve. He feels like if the idea of Captain America started up in modern day, Sam could be the guy to volunteer. What do we think about that idea about Sam being the representative of what is American today?
Yeah,
or what is patriotic today?
I think he represents definitely an idealized version, but definitely the America of today. Like, yeah.
So he's
sorry, that's my only contribution.
That's fine. So he's a soldier, an ex-soldier. More specifically, Air Force kind of special unit guy. And he's got this tragic backstory, just like Steve, with his wingman, whose name eludes me. We'll call him Alex. He's got his wingman. He went down on a mission. Sam got out of the war. He's helping people day to day with his veteran meetings. And he gets back into the fight because Captain America's there, which is the idea of this paragon character, who is a character who exists and through sheer value of existing inspires other people to join them. And so, Sam signs back up. He gets back into the Falcon suit and he goes out and does what is right for the simple reason that it is the right thing to do. Sam doesn't have any larger motive to be a superhero. Like Tony Stark has redemption. Doctor Strange would have protection, I suppose.
Don't speak about Doctor Strange.
And then Black Panther has the legacy to uphold. Whereas the Falcon, he's just doing what's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's really effective, really simple, and just really needed. Very necessary to have a hero who wants to do what's right for the sheer virtue of being right.
Yeah, because he's like a civilian now, so he doesn't have to get involved again, but he sees that something is happening that is wrong, and he just like stands up and goes, "No, okay, this is not happening."
I feel like it's also partially though that he seemed to have nothing else in his life. Like he was going to the VA, but he has like no friends or family that we know about.
Yeah, that's entirely true.
It's
just like, oh, Captain America, guess he's going to be my best friend now.
Oh my god, Captain America ran past me. Although, that bit at the start and the little scene in the hospital bed at the end is so sweet.
Oh, absolutely.
Just lovely.
And also the running use of the Marvin Gaye, just the idea of bringing someone back. It's not like we could have just had Steve using his list as this kind of way of bringing him back into our world, but having it be Sam, having him run the VA or do whatever he does with him, and then he's not just bringing civilians back into the real world, he's bringing Steve into the real world. It's very strong, and it instantly endears you to his character.
Yes,
I think that's really powerful. But yeah, about the Falcon as a hero, obviously we're seeing his origin story here. It's a prototype suit. He gets an upgraded one later on, and you do say he becomes grounded quite early on in the fight. How do you feel about his action scenes? Does he really prove himself? Do you feel anything's missing, or do you feel that maybe he's doing too much? How do we feel?
That scene where they throw Jasper Sitwell off the roof is the greatest thing to happen to humanity. And his like reveal of like the Falcon wings is so good, and also him talking to Sitwell on the phone, I thought like was a good demonstration of like him being useful in multiple ways. not you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more of it. I feel like it quickly became very centered on. I mean, he does go and do a fist fight with that man.
Brock Rublow.
Yes, him.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up later on, so we'll put a pin in that.
Okay, yeah. We'll put a pin in that. A lot of that scene is weird, just saying. I feel like we're really robbed of like a little lineup scene of like him, Natasha, and Cap. And just like going off to do the thing, because they do that really well in like Iron Man 2 and all the Avengers movies. And Thor Ragnarok, have a nice lineup scene. I just like a good lineup scene. I like to see all the people together.
Yeah, honestly,
it's pretty epic.
It's pretty cheesy. However, it is in movies like this, or say Lord of the Rings or Harry, like fantasy or anything that has a team of heroic people. You got to see them together.
Yeah, that's what's missing from this movie. Yeah. Aside from that 5 minutes of backstory, but also like just.
I'm trying to think how much discussion before I move on to this key topic, but I think we need some more discussion. So, Amberine, I think we've talked to death about Sam. We've talked quite a bit about Natasha. Let's do a bit more on Steve. So, what do you think of Steve as a superhero in this film? Less as continuing his character arc, but as an icon of the people. How do you view Steve as Captain America?
Well, I feel like he's not Captain America much in this movie. It seems like a lot of what he does is Steve Rogers doing it, because Captain America is that representation of stuff, and he is doing like he starts off with all the spy stuff, which it's Captain America in that he's using all his badassery, but he's not doing the soldiering on in front of a group of people kind of thing.
Right.
So I don't know if it's I don't know if you see much of Captain America as we're used to him in the movie at all.
I think that's really interesting, and it also reflects because essentially Steve has four main costumes in this movie. You got the stealth suit from the beginning. You've got his general kind of jacket and jeans combo when he's just in his civilian outfit. You've got the on the run outfit, which is the hat, sunglasses, and hooded jacket. The classic staple.
Where did he get them? Like, at what point did he stop and go, right, I need to go and buy some clothes?
And who didn't spot him and immediately hound him?
Yeah, right.
Who didn't immediately look at him and go, holy shit, that's Captain America?
And then lastly, you have his museum outfit, which is the end. So only one of those outfits is Captain America. The stealth one, he doesn't wear the red and white stripes.
He
paints over the shield. He's got the star, but it's a stealth outfit. And you could make an argument that he's being Steve Rogers, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., rather than Captain America. And then he's got two civilian outfits, one of which is explicitly a disguise.
A shit disguise.
And the final one he puts on to make a statement. So I think it's really interesting that you mentioned he doesn't feel like Captain America.
I have a different interpretation of this final scene. And I think in this scene, he is more Steve Rogers than Captain America in this movie. He is himself. And when he puts on that Captain American outfit again, he makes Captain America Steve Rogers rather than becoming Captain America. Captain America is now Steve Rogers.
That's really interesting.
Like, he pushes his newfound values onto this and goes, right, okay, maybe in this case people are going to die. Maybe in this case I will have to go and fight for this man who I want like back as my friend. And maybe people won't agree with that, but I'm going to do this because this is what Steve believes, not because this is ideologically the right thing to do. And we see that further on as Captain America kind of becomes this concept and Steve is like a different man in Civil War.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Do you have any more to add on that, or should we move on to, say, Nick Fury or Maria Hill?
Can we move on to Bucky?
Oh, okay. I was
we
going to
didn't
save
talk about him.
Bucky.
Oh, we're saving Bucky. Okay, we can talk about Nick Fury and Maria Hill.
Cool.
We can lump Agent
Oh,
Carter
do
into
we-
that as well.
Oh, see, I'm gonna talk about
Oh.
Sharon Carter.
Okay.
So yeah, I wanted to run through heroes and then more into
Okay.
villains. So
Nick Fury.
Maria Hill, Nick Fury, even. Take it away.
You know me, I'm not a fan of a twist situation.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind them, but like killing Nick Fury and then he's back and then he's dead again. In theory, I don't know. There's too much like. You know, this is actually a good example of it being fine and working out well, but other movies have done it very badly, so I have like suspicions of it. But I like Nick Fury in this movie. I feel like he's fleshed out more, and that he becomes he goes through a similar transformation to Steve, I think, in that he no longer just is like this figurehead, in that he's like, this is what we have to do because this is what we're supposed to do. He's like, actually, this is the wrong thing to do. And it might be the harder thing to do, but it's still the right thing to do.
Right.
Also, Maria Hill looks great in this movie.
Kobe Smulders is a really actually excellent choice for Maria Hill.
She really does smolder.
In terms of the looks and in terms of acting, quite decisive. It's interesting that we haven't really seen Maria Hill at her full potential yet, and I think that's because Nick Fury's still around.
Oh yeah, he should have died.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to legitimately still be alive.
Aside from Samuel L. Jackson's
oh
charisma.
my god, an excellent scene of him being like, "You need to keep both eyes open."
Yeah, right.
Those kind of lines are my favorite because they're so cheesy, but they're so great.
Oh, see, she could have cut his eye out. I think
I mean, Maria Hill is like, she'll do anything it takes, but I don't think she'll do that.
Are you sure?
When there's an option of not.
Okay. But I also feel like this is like, I don't know, it kind of bugged me that Fury came back in Age of Ultron, and I felt like this was a good place for him to leave off. Right. And for Maria to take over as head of whatever S.H.I.E.L.D. has become.
See, that's what I thought would be most interesting, because going with the storyline in the comics, Nick Fury dies and Maria Hill takes over, becoming a more ruthless director of S.H.I.E.L.D., whereas Nick Fury was quite, as we see in this movie, content to let things run. She has to iron fist it. Not the superhero. And so that could have been interesting to see her come into her own with this, but with the destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D., I see why that was a bit
I'm interested that they chose this moment to destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, we've literally just been introduced to it as a full-on concept. And they destroy it very quickly, especially with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. happening.
Yeah, this is the first film that gave us a true hint as to how quick the MCU is going. Yeah.
Like, this movie, it just changed the game entirely. And I keep saying that, but, like, you know, this movie is just a complete shift. Yeah. I would be interested to see whether they'll incorporate Sword into the movies.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Could run that.
That is true. It really does depend on if they decide to reintegrate the TV side of things into the movies, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as far as I'm aware currently,
it's gone into a very different direction.
Yeah, it's building S.H.I.E.L.D. up as a thing again, as an organization.
Ooh, and I'm very behind.
Right, I'm only on Series 3, but I've heard rumours of what's going on in Series 5, and if they can get sorted out and reintegrate the TV and movie side of things,
maybe they'll just rename themselves as Sword, because they can't call themselves S.H.I.E.L.D. again.
Yeah.
It's like everyone would be like, "Oh, weren't you the Nazis?"
Yeah, right. So it'll be interesting to see if they bring back an organization. Especially
this all depends on what happens in Infinity War. So
yeah, and especially with Captain Marvel, with her running Alpha Flight and things in the comics, there's possibilities for more organizational planetary defense forces to happen.
Where has she been? There better be good explanation, otherwise I'll be cross.
So yeah, that's Nick Fury's car chase scene. What do we think about that?
Amazing.
My immediate like memory of that is just the air conditioning working. Like, the first thing
it's hilarious.
I genuinely think that's indicative of the comedy in this movie and how well it works. It doesn't undercut the tension at all.
No. I cracked up and I was still like,
yeah, because it's comedy that's born from the scenario rather than I'm trying to think of a counter example from another movie, but it's
where they start making jokes.
The Wi-Fi moment in Doctor Strange.
No, still not seen that movie, and I refuse to. And you're just making it sound even worse now.
He makes a joke, and to be fair, it's not the worst. But
probably is because Benedict Cumberbatch said it.
Wong gives Doctor Strange a word written down on a piece of paper, and Doctor Strange says, "What is this? My mantra." This is the beginning of his training, and then he says, "No, it's the Wi-Fi password. We're not savages." Decently funny moment, born out of logic from the world, but it's nothing to do with the story, so it takes you out for a second. Whereas this joke and Shuri's jokes in Black Panther about the Vine references and all that, those make sense and further the plot.
Yes.
The air conditioning joke, the air conditioning joke furthers Nick Fury's exasperation with his situation. And it really does work, I believe. And then the rest of the scene is just intense.
Bucky's eyeliner. Oh my god.
So this is a really good segue into Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier.
That entrance is amazing.
Yeah.
His hair just flowing in the wind. So extra. Love it.
Just when you think Nick Fury's escaped to the police, which, first of all, having this black guy be in a car chase with the police, dude,
this
social commentary
is like chock full at every turn, especially since in terms of sound, we have like a black man epitomizing the new America.
Yes, definitely. So just as you think everything's happened, just as you think he's finally got away because he's nicked Dan Fury and he's got a car that's basically a spaceship, which we do see it has flight capabilities, which comes across later in S.H.I.E.L.D.
I love that they're broken though, because I was like, if it worked, it would be too like weird. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
It wouldn't have worked,
And then at the end, you see that he hasn't escaped because there's the Winter Soldier, and this is the first time we see the Winter Soldier. It's shot really well, camera work. He's fuzzy. We're seeing him through the broken windshield. Everything slows down. The music cuts out. Well, the music continues, but the sound cuts out. And then he just blows up the car. And he's wearing his full mask, the mouthpiece and the goggles.
I can't remember if I knew that Bucky Barnes was the Winter Soldier. I think
that's what
I
was
must
going to
have
ask.
because it was all around Tumblr, and I was like deep into the Tumblr thing at this point.
So
I think pretty much everyone knew.
What I can say is that I knew because I read the story years before. However, the friend that I went to see the movie with didn't know.
Yeah, my friend didn't know.
And when I was rewatching this movie with Emma, she said that it's done really well because even though she knew this time a short while ago, she still couldn't quite make the connection. Not logically, she knew, but like the film wasn't telling her it was Bucky. The film was telling her that it was a mystery. Even when you saw his hair, totally different hair. Even when you saw his eyes,
they're surrounded by black eyeliner.
Yeah, it drip fed the information to you in such an effective way.
While we're on this subject, can we talk about that scene in Alexander Pierce's house with a fucking milk? That's another great example of the comedy in the film. It's like, be like, do you want some milk?
Yep.
But he's not saying anything.
And also, that scene does really well to show that, because that's the moment it's revealed that Alexander Pierce is a villain. Because at that point, you're supposed to believe that I didn't notice this watching it the first time, but this plot line is so tightly woven that Nick Fury discovers something's going wrong. He can't access the files because he didn't give himself clearance, and so he's like, "This is weird. I'm going to talk to Alexander Pierce." And then suddenly, Alexander Pierce is like, "Dude, Security Council, let's cancel everything. There's something fishy going on." And then
I am the fish.
Exactly right. And then the Winter Soldier tries to assassinate Nick Fury because he raised the flag to Alexander Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
And then at this point, we're supposed to believe that Pierce is the good guy. He raised the flag to the Security Council. So then Bucky turns up at his house. We're thinking that this is just continuation of events, and everyone who's thinking there's something fishy going on.
Yeah, he's about to die.
Yeah. And it's shot in such a way. Bucky's in shadow, his eyes the only thing in light, and Pierce is really surprised by his appearance. He's gonna get some milk.
Sorry.
But then the switch when Pierce says, "Do you want some milk?" and you're like, "Oh damn, this is expected."
And then he shoots his
housekeeper.
Yeah. That was insane as well. I was just like, oh my god, we're straight up just killing middle-aged women now.
You know the trope, kick the dog? That's when you know when a villain is really bad when they kick the dog. Nah, it's when you kill the middle-aged woman.
Okay, so I would like to make, before we get too deep into this, I'd like to make some points about casting in this movie. If you've watched these before, you will know that literally every time I talk about exceptionalism. However, in this movie, I think it's significant that all of the people in the elevator with Steve Rogers are men. And we see a very specific attraction of men, and it is very clearly associated with Hydra. And there is also a very clear aspect of who Captain America's allies are 2 black men and 2 women. So there are only 2 women in Hydra. I was stalking through the IMDb page, and they are during a mass scene where they're all walking forward. There's like 2 women. They're both white and middle-aged looking. And I think that the fact that Pierce is also a white older man, and his violence to his housekeeper, who is I think she's Asian. I wasn't paying very much attention.
I think she's Hispanic.
Oh, is she? Sorry, I wasn't paying a lot of attention at this point. I was just like, she's a woman.
It's a stereotype.
Yeah.
They really just, very minor character, you just needed to know who she was immediately.
Yeah, okay. So, sorry, wasn't paying much attention.
Quite all right.
Yes, so I thought that was like, it's very clear that Hydra is like associated with these white men, and even though some of the men are not white, it's
there are a couple
still
of white guys in the elevator.
Yeah, it's still like very much
there's
like
power structures.
It's very much a power structure, and the black men and other men who are within Hydra are all like the exceptions, and the women as well. Whereas like it's clearly a cause of it is very clearly coded as Nazism in the same way.
Definitely. Especially with the character of Brock Rumlow.
Yes.
He's very dismissive of anyone who isn't like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we see that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that the casting choices in this movie were done really well, and whoever did that, kudos to them. Good job.
Yeah. So, yes, with Alexander Pierce. So, speaking of casting choices, he's played by Robert Redford, and this is yet another occasion of Marvel going with very big name actor from a few decades ago being the villain, or just someone who's special, like, and we've got this guy or girl in Kate Blanchett's appearance. And interestingly enough, the Russo brothers did say that the reason they picked Robert Redford to be Alexander Pierce was that if they were making this movie back in that decade, whichever one he was most popular in, they would have cast him as Captain America.
That's genius. I love it.
Yeah.
That is very clever.
That is very good.
Yeah. Also, okay, so I just have a bunch of general points left to make.
Yeah, please do.
One of them is that Pierce is clearly coded as misogynist. When he says a line about, what if they knew they were going to drag your daughters in there and kill them? And it's like, just your daughter? Okay, we don't care about men. And I mean, you can say that's misandrist, but it's actually misogynist because it's painting women as the only victim.
Yeah. It's the
also-
idea of they're going to kill the women and children.
Oh no, not the women and children. To be fair, I would be first to jump on that if like some kind of situation arose. I'd be like, I'm a woman and a child. Emotionally. Put me on that boat.
Oh my god.
I deserve it. Leave Greg behind. Okay. What else do I have to say? Oh, also it has one of the strongest aesthetics, I think, this film.
Yeah.
All the scenes are very clearly like, they're not coloured like in the same way as some films are, where you have like positive colours and negative colours, but there is a very clear like grey, red, blue kind of aesthetic going on, and I think that is to do with the Captain America symbol. See, this is another movie. Why the red room would have been a great scene to include. Could have had a nice red scene, but everyone's outfits are really well coordinated, and it's just shot in like, yeah, the directing of this is great. Just generally.
Yeah.
Also, a minor observation was that Bucky just disappears off like a local cryptid. Just gone to live in the Washington woods.
Yeah.
He's doing his thing. It's fine. The slow motion of Cap falling, the style of that you can see later on in Thor Ragnarok, where that's kind of like furthered. It's very similar to the fall of Valkyrie, especially in terms of like how the shots are like done, because it's so slow-mo and with all the glass and stuff.
I do want to mention with that, so it's the second time that Steve Rogers has gone down with the ship, and it's very symbolic for obvious reasons, but this time it parallels both the first Avenger and the Civil War. In the first Avenger, he was essentially alone. He was speaking on comms to a woman. In the first one, it's Peggy, and in this one, it's Maria Hill. But in this movie, he has a friend. He's not alone in the war, and as a result, Bucky pulls him out of the water, saving his life. And it also, if we're talking really simple film theory, anytime a character gets submerged in water, they're being baptized. They're being rebirthed. And this is definitely a rebirth for both of those characters. Bucky gains his memories back, and Steve, as you mentioned earlier, Abby, Steve and Captain America become the same guy.
Yeah, this is like the fact that he deliberately like lets Bucky push him off is the completion of Captain America becoming Steve Rogers, because Steve Rogers, Captain America, would have to kill Bucky because that is the right thing to do for America. But Captain America, Steve Rogers, is willing to let Bucky kill him.
Yeah. And
also it does parallel the first movie where we have Bucky falling off, and now Marvel just loves to throw people off things. We'll be coming back to this.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
And yeah, in Civil War, there's the moment with the helicopter, Steve's beautiful moment with these big biceps. And then they fall into the water, and Steve pulls Bucky out this time.
So emotional.
Yeah, it's just a really, really good moment.
Did you have stuff you wanted to say about Bucky?
I'm actually trying to think. I just think there's a reason everyone fell in love with him in this movie, and it's simply because A, it's a really good story from the beginning, even before the movie. It's just a really good comic. And B, the acting was phenomenal.
Yeah.
The fear in his eyes when he's being wiped, the Terminator physical like body language when in the fight scenes. I'm terrified of this guy. This is arguably the first time a Marvel villain has been legitimately scary.
Yes. Also, the fight scenes, Sebastian Stan did most of his own stunts.
Yeah.
And also, side point, I'm currently rewatching Gossip Girl, and Sebastian Stan keeps appearing. I'm just like, where's your eyeliner?
Watch Once Upon a Time. You still got it there.
Oh my god, I need to get into that. Okay. Yeah. So the fight scenes in this movie are really closely shot. They're really tight, and they just look great.
Yeah, a lot of people have issue with shaky cam, what they refer to as, but I don't believe that this is the same level.
I love it. No, it's nowhere near that bad. No, it's brilliant.
It's done with purpose.
The right level.
Yeah. Every movement of the camera follows or tracks some movement of the characters, so you feel every punch, especially on the boat in the beginning. If you lose track of what's going on, that's intentional because the character's losing track of what's going on. If someone gets punched really hard and falls off a boat, the camera follows them, so you feel the weight of each punch. And more so than any other film, I believe this movie shows the physical strength of its characters.
I do love the scene at the start where we have Steve running. The way that is shot is so good because, like, 20 years ago, they would have just shot a film of him running and sped it up.
Yeah.
And, like, the way they shoot that with, like, focusing in on Sam and then, like, widening the shot and he's already over there, I'm just brilliant. Yeah.
Genuinely incredible.
This is just really good.
Yeah. I think The Winter Soldier, something that I think is really excellent is that they knew that they had a sequel coming. And a lot of the time that can be dangerous because it just means that you leave character arcs incomplete. But with this one, it meant that they didn't give us too much. He was the Winter Soldier who happened to be Bucky. He wasn't... They didn't have to do the entire Bucky story in one movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that worked really well.
Yeah. I feel if they'd have tried to cram it all in and have his redemption arc in this movie, it would have failed.
Yeah, this is the same thing they do with Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy, in that we don't have to have like a whole Nebula redemption situation going on until like the next movie when they've already like moved past a kind of ending event and now they can kind of move on.
Very true.
And we can get into backstory more.
Yeah. Ambreen, do you have any thoughts on Bucky before we move on?
Other than I love him, not really.
Cool. I do think, and this may be proven wrong in Infinity War, but I think this is the greatest costume Sebastian Stan has ever worn in these movies. So the Bucky outfit in the war in First Avengers.
Don't talk to me about it.
It was all right. They got the color right. He was wearing his blue jacket, and it had the kind of stripes. It was all right. He had a sniper rifle. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
It differentiated him. In The Winter Soldier, he had his mask, which genius idea to give him the mouth mask because it covers the exact opposite parts of his face to Steve.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also has that sort of implication that he's like muzzled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it hides his it takes away his identity.
And it takes away his voice.
Yeah. And it also just makes him scary, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite scary.
But then the skin tight black suit that has the stripes from his Bucky costume, it has all the guns tightly. And this is where I feel it's different from the Civil War costume. Because in Civil War, he wore something similar, like it was combat gear, but it was just kind of baggy.
Yeah.
And it didn't look...
He hadn't been to a fitter, okay? It was a different time.
Like, genuinely, he just didn't look like the Terminator, which he is.
Yeah.
And then in Infinity War, he's looking all right. I'm liking the new arm. They've got a blue jacket back.
I like me.
Yeah.
He looks like he's gone for a little blow dry with his hair. He's like, yes, I did a spa weekend. Hello, everyone. How are you? Oh, God, this movie is going to be just ridiculous. Yeah. I was also going to say, he's wearing the, like, corset thing that they have in these superhero movies.
Yeah.
I reblogged a tweet about this morning, but I think maybe I didn't. Anyway, that Killmonger also has, and someone else does as well. And yeah, it's just like a kind of a trope that they use in terms of like how they design the clothes all together. They look similar. I'll talk about this in Black Panther, whatever.
With Steve's costume, this new one, they redesigned the Captain America costume for his stealth outfit that was then recolored basically for Avengers Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And they gave him the shield holder, the straps that like tight around his arms. Very simple detail, but it does something phenomenal to his body, which I didn't think would be possible translating to the page, in that it just makes his chest look bigger.
Oh yeah, he has the same thing. It's like how it's like, fitted across.
Yeah. And that was a big problem with the Avengers costume was that
He looked
he
small.
he just looked really tiny. And Daredevil in the Netflix show has a similar problem. The clothes just look a bit baggy because they're not pulled in thanks to like straps and pouches and stuff.
Not like Loki's Jotunheim outfit with that cinched waist.
Oh my
Sorry,
god.
bag. Okay.
So, do we have anything more to say about the Winter Soldier?
I mean, I could talk about it for
I
hours.
like the fighting.
About the character of the Winter Soldier, because we've still got 2 characters left.
Oh my god.
And I do want to talk about these.
Okay,
Because opinions.
let's go.
So we have
Right.
Brock Rublow and we have Sharon Carter. In
Sharon.
this movie, just known as Sharon.
Let's start with Brock.
So I really need the loo. So do you just want to talk about Brock?
I know
Well, I
nothing about Brock. I just know he exists. And he's a
I
Nazi.
hate him based on his face alone. I don't know what it is about his face, but it just makes me hate him.
He was
So you just do that while I go.
his whole like presence is very, even from the beginning, I don't trust him watching this movie.
Yeah.
He has a dodgy look.
Yeah, he has like an air of toxic masculinity around him.
He has the air of like he'd just like be about to mansplain something to me. And I'm
Yeah,
just,
while taking steroids.
yeah.
Because
He looks like that kind of guy who goes to the gym all the time and lives on like chicken, never eats greens and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely see him with a military background.
I don't know if he's been in something else that made me hate him, or if it was just an instinctive thing with how he was acted. I'm gonna quickly search him so I can find out if he's been in anything else.
So this is another instance of the casting just being really good in terms of like what I mean, okay, you shouldn't judge people by what they look like, but in terms of like the design as well and just the combination is just like really good at giving us clear messages.
Yeah.
And his body language as well.
Yeah.
Like there's this part where he directly addresses Cap all the time. He never talks to Natasha.
Yeah.
He kind of turns his back to her, which like
yeah, and like
feels.
you'd assume he'd been working with her longer as well.
You would, but
So,
no. He just
yeah,
disrespects her completely.
And she's competent on like another level. So it's like if you're ignoring her, you must be a douchebag.
Yeah, he just like he physically turns away from her and does not address her in any way. And then his kind of treatment of I think he's also coded as like misogynist.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know if he has been anything else. I think I just hate his face.
he looks like Grant Ward. Can I just throw that
He
out
does
there?
look a bit like Grant Ward.
See, Grant Ward, also known Nazi.
Yeah.
Not in the real
So-
world.
To summarize, I was the bad guy.
Some people look like Nazis, is what we've concluded here.
Nice.
But they seem to have black hair and not blue eyes.
Interesting. So the reason I want to talk about Brock was because this is his origin story.
He's back in Civil War.
Yeah.
For like
He's
10
the
minutes.
villain Crossbones, who in the comics is essentially the right-hand guy to the Red Skull. He's a big threat. And they tried in this movie. I mean, they set him up as the shield agent in the very beginning, so it's like he's right there, you can't miss him. He was in the elevator fight scene,
Mm-hmm.
and he had the bit at the end where he was a kind of lead Hydra guy. And I think that and he also had the thing where he was like, I'm gonna fight the tiny curly head guy at the chair with the weird shootout bit, right?
Oh yeah.
Like he was a threat. He was a decent character in this film. And at the end, he had the building fall on him, and it then showed you his like burn injury, so you knew he was coming back.
Doesn't
Now,
he
the problem
die in like
is-
the first 5 minutes of Civil War?
Yeah, he does. I'm forever salty about that, but I'll save that for the Civil War discussion.
Alright.
No, I think Brock serves as a good counter character to Sharon.
Yeah.
So
I'd agree. But I wish we had more of Sharon to balance this
yeah,
out.
I was gonna wait. Do you two want to yell some thoughts about Sharon Carter?
Would you like to start? I just want to get my notes up.
Well, I haven't thought about it enough to have notes, but I was like, I would probably really like this character, but I don't think there's enough there, and it
Right.
just makes me perpetually annoyed when she's on screen because I'm just like, there's just nothing.
Okay.
My
So
question is, why is she posing as a nurse, then shows she is a nurse by doing that, and then suddenly she's just level 1 at S.H.I.E.L.D.? Surely she's like a nurse at S.H.I.E.L.D.
yeah,
Would that not make more logical sense here? Oh
Fair
my god.
play.
See, if we also had Red Room stuff, we could like give her superhuman powers. Oh, I'm just sad.
Yep.
No, I
So,
feel like she should be
in-
prominent in the last bit.
okay.
Wasn't.
So talk about what's in the movie, because I have some thoughts courtesy of my discussion with Emma about
So
what
you've stolen the thoughts of a woman.
Yes, definitely. So what is in this movie? What do we know about Shannon? Do we like it?
Well, I didn't even know her name. They don't say her name.
They say it once,
Yeah.
and it's
but-
intentionally. What was her name again? Sharon.
Yeah, at the end. I'm
Yeah.
like, can we
She
not have her name
introduces
at the
herself as
start?
Agent 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's in like a moment where you don't really catch it. I'd have liked Steve to address her by name or like something like that.
Yeah.
Just so that I know who she is, because I was like, oh yeah, that's the blonde one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her false name is Kate that she gives.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, oh yeah, Kate.
Yeah.
Shield Agent Kate.
Yeah, so what do we have? We have at the beginning, she is Steve's neighbor. They have a pretty decent little conversation together. Like, it's charming. There's some charisma there. And then immediately after that, Nick Fury is assassinated, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Agent 13. I'm here to protect you." It's like, oh crikey, that was a whiplash.
She should have appeared earlier on. Like, we should have, I don't know, there should have been some way to have her in a little bit earlier, so there's not so much whiplash.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
I don't know how you do that,
Really
but
competent when we do see her.
yeah.
Like, not like overly, but enough that you're like, oh, she's very good at this, and you're like, oh, she's a secret agent, that's why.
Right. So the problem that Emma did raise was that this is probably, and for a lot of reasons, I'm fairly confident this is the case, this is probably the fault of Emily Van Camp, the actress, that she's fairly understated.
Yeah, her other stuff that she's done, which includes Revenge, is like where everything is kind of going on under the surface, but here her character is too small to be doing that.
Yeah.
And she also does that in Civil War as well.
Yeah.
But...
So I looked up her IMDb, and it seems that she's a lead actress in a lot of things that no one's really seen.
I've seen Revenge.
Okay.
My mum has, and I've watched a bit of it.
But seemingly she was chosen for this role, A, because she looks like her, and B, because she has apparent like lead star potential. But maybe she wasn't up against that fierce competition in those other movies and TV shows. Whereas in this film, when she's up against more strong personality actors, she gets a little bit drowned. And this is especially in comparison to, in this movie, Black Widow and Maria Hill. And as we later find out, that she's a Carter against Haley Atwell's Peggy Carter.
Oh my god, Haley Atwell's performance in this movie is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sharon just seems a little bit nothingy. So
that's okay. So she's incompetent is the impression that I got, because she fails to save Nick Fury. We don't see any examples of her being competent, and even though that turns out to be fake, that is left too long. Like, I wish we could see her in some like respect at the start, just like, I don't know, doing something and being competent at it. Whereas like I mean her scene at the end where she pulls that gun on fucking Crossbones. See, I'm so glad you've given me his supervillain name, because I don't remember his actual name and don't care to know it. Like, in between there, she's just kind of nothingy. She doesn't really register. You know?
Right.
Sorry, my mum just asked me what I'm doing.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, she does seem a little bit not quite there. And I think that there's certainly a combination of they were setting her up for Civil War, and they didn't want to detract from the main movie because it is so tiny woven, just like with Brock Rumlow. And this is why I think they're a good counterpoint to each other. They were both introduced in this movie not as who they really were. Brock being a SHIELD agent, her being a nurse, and then they were built up slowly, and they were put together as you said when she pulls the gun on him. They were slowly introduced, and when these actions started, they were put together, and they conflicted. But
I'd have
then
liked a
Brock
fight
got
sequence
more.
between them.
Yes, and here's the key change that I would make to this film, and this is genuinely, aside from minor things like we mentioned with Natasha's backstory, this is the key change that I think would make this film properly 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And that is, there's a fight scene later on after the Falcon gets grounded, where Sam and Brock get into a fist fight on the building before the building crashes. Replace Sam with Sharon. Fixed.
I think that a lot of movies are afraid to have women who fight with their fists, as opposed to like Black Widow's method. She is obviously very strong, but her method of fighting is to like throw, it's very martial arts type thing. Whereas Steve Rogers' method of fighting, we do see a bit of him using martial arts, or like maybe, better example, Thor is like just smash. And I mean, this is also the method of fighting that Captain Marvel will presumably be using. It was like, I can't see her wrapping her legs around anyone's head.
That's like simple enough.
But I'm hoping she'll punch some people.
Yeah.
So what I would like from Sharon is to see her deck people, basically.
Right.
I want her to like, and I feel like a lot of movies are afraid to have women in fist fights with men. Because they're like, oh, it's misogynist. It actually isn't. It's actually misogynist to not do it.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of like, because you can fall dangerously into some battered woman traps. However, that's not actually their problem with doing it.
Brock is quite misogynistically coded.
Yeah, so to have her like destroy him would be great.
So I think that alongside what you just said, narratively it would make more sense because they've been built up as these two new characters who aren't what they appear to be, and they have this initial conflict during the what's it called, Mexican standoff scene. Then to have them have a fist fight, and also to show the fist fight, because when Sam and Brock have it, they do that excellent cut on their like fist meeting, and then we just cut to after the fight. It's like, oh, cool, thanks.
I'm like, you've both just broken your thumbs, but whatever. Go off, I guess.
The Sharon and Brock have a martial arts fight, because Brock is definitely just going to box.
I feel like Brock would be a boxer, and I'd like to see him take on Sharon in the stance that she is also a boxer.
Yeah, that would be cool. It will also differentiate her from Black Widow, which is sorely needed, as we see in Civil War, because we do see the two of them taking on Bucky in Civil War.
They both throw themselves at him in exactly the same way.
There's very little distinction. So to have her be really good at fist fighting would be really, really cool, and also show her to be
in Civil War that comes out of nowhere.
Yep.
She just like, I don't know. I feel like she and Black Widow become interchangeable in Civil War. Yes. Oh god, we're gonna have so much to say in Civil War.
No, I was talking with Emma about this and how Natasha and Sharon are too interchangeable, and I feel that an excellent way of differentiating this, because they're essentially two sides of the same coin in their design. So Natasha is the morally conflicted Russian with the black outfit and the lots and lots of weaponry.
Sharon's white outfit, give me this, please.
In the comics, is the blonde-haired American with the white outfit, and she just fights.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting. Is the word dichotomy?
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it's really interesting to see, but in the movie they just.
My other issue with her is the fact that she's introduced as like this high-ranking person, because she's like, oh, I'm Agent 13, and presumably that's the same thing as being like 007 kind of thing.
Yes, that's what I think.
And then she's working like a desk job at the bottom, and I'm like, is she being punished for killing Nick Fury? Like, what's happened here? Why isn't she like number one on like the recruiting list of Steve?
Yeah, especially because she's Sharon Carter's niece.
She's Sharon Carter's niece.
Sorry, Peggy Carter's niece. Sorry,
Yeah,
but
like
say later that she keeps it quite
You can't keep it
That's
quiet from Shield,
But why the fuck isn't she running this place?
right?
Her,
So
her
I think-
aunt founded it.
Yeah,
What is
so I think
going
this,
on?
having this one fight scene just be her instead of Sam would fix a lot of tiny issues that you have with the character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
also, it would mean that it would be a team. So
Yeah, and then we could have like a lineup of
exactly. So you've got Steve, Sam, Natasha, and Sharon
downstairs.
as Team Cap taking things on. And then, because Sam's problem is that he gets grounded really early, and then he's just like, I guess I'm fighting Brock now, even though they have zero reason to fight. That's their first time on screen together.
That's the first time they've met, and he's like, oh yeah, come at me. And I'm like, how do you know they're not on the same team?
Yeah,
Because
there's
he
a
looks
really-
so
I don't
Hydra.
know who this man is.
he gets a really good line, which is, man, shut the hell up. I like that. Anthony Mackie, you can say that a lot.
Mm.
But to have Sharon take down Brock in that
It's-
scene would be the culmination of their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Oof. Sad times, guys.
literally aside from that, this movie is the best.
Yeah, this is the best of the MCU, I would say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so moving on, I think it's time.
It's
Otherwise
time.
We'll just get more and more intense.
Oh,
Let's move
I
on to
swear,
something
every
that
time.
changed everything. James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. So, I went to see this movie because at this point that was what I did with my life. I just went to see Marvel movies. I'd seen like the trailer, I was like, whatever, cool. It's a new Marvel movie, I'll just go see it. This film blew my mind. I was like, this has all the aspects that Thor should be.
Yeah.
And it was just great. I loved everything about it. It was fun. There's a lot of fun characters introduced. And also, it's one of those movies that you can just go and see without
Yeah.
having to have any context of the rest of this universe.
And not
Easily.
feeling massively depressed afterwards.
So much so that in the comments, Ellen Jones has just said that's the only one she's seen.
Oh my, I hate Ellen. How are we friends, honestly? She hasn't seen Thor, it upsets me.
So yeah, this is crazy. Right? This movie is mad. It's the final one of Phase 2. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, aside
I'm
It's
not
the final
quoting you if you're wrong, am I?
yeah, it's the final one of the setup before the Avengers in Phase
Yes.
2. And
Which is a weird way to set up the Avengers.
yeah, right? And it's
Oh my god.
no one saw it coming. Like
I
even
think
the
not
people,
even Marvel.
Even James Gunn didn't see this.
yeah. And so, do you remember how you felt about this movie before you'd seen it?
I just non-register really. I just
Yeah.
want to see it.
Right.
I was like, oh, there's a talking tree.
I think I was excited to see Sean Gunn in it because I hadn't seen him in anything since Gilmore Girls.
I love the idea of Sean Gunn being the star attraction of this movie.
I was
Oh, dude, Kraglin, my favorite character.
true.
Like he's great. No dissing Sean Gunn or Kraglin, but like imagine.
I
So
was so excited.
when this
to
movie was
see
announced,
Zoe.
all of the like my kind of Marvel fans, the ones who had kind of dipped their toes in and were pretty excited, didn't know who the Guardians were.
No.
We barely knew who Thanos was when he was in Avengers. And then you had to then convince your friends and family to see this movie. It's like, okay, right. So it's a sci-fi. It's pretty cool. No one has any superpowers. But there's like a green lady who used to be in Star Trek. There's a pro wrestler who has daggers. There's a
The
raccoon.
Rock is in it.
Yep. Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
There's a tree. And that guy from Parks and Rec.
What is happening? Dwayne the Rock Johnson playing Dave Bautista because he's got versatility.
Amazing.
So, and then the villain is a religious zealot. But there's also a cyborg played by a Scottish lady who used to be in Doctor Who. Glenn Close and
God, Glenn Close is in this movie.
And what's his name? Ben C. Riley? Policeman.
The Space Police.
And also the soundtrack is
80s pop.
And it's directed by the guy who wrote the Scooby-Doo movies.
Which, like, honestly, if I'd known that he wrote the Scooby-Doo movies, I would have been first in line.
Scooby-Doo movies are iconic.
Yeah.
What is happening? And then by the end of it, you're going to cry because the tree dies.
Oh yeah, in the fight, there's a dance off.
Oh yeah. There's so much going on in this film. It's all great.
I genuinely don't know where to begin. So,
oh god, I did have a comment I was going to make. Just, I'll remember it in a sec.
Okay, let's begin with the aesthetic, because I think that's a really good counterpoint to Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm. This movie is everywhere aesthetically, and it is glorious. We have like a whole new color palette introduced. It's clear that we're not on Earth, we're like somewhere completely different, and the color palette visibly changes once we leave Earth. And it all looks great. There's a lot of red, a lot of blue, there's a lot of primary colors, but all combined together in a way that we don't see in the other Marvel movies, which are kind of like set in a realist aesthetic.
I feel like they tried to do the sort of pushing the colours with Thor a bit, and then they went, let's not go too far.
Yeah.
James Gunn just went, fuck it.
With Thor, they went very gold, silver, bronze.
Forever sad about those movies. Betrayed.
And then, yeah, so with this movie, they really just took, and I think that something that's really interesting is they took what you were familiar with and pushed it. They didn't go straight in. So they took that little bit on Earth in the 80s and then just said, we're taking that away. You've got your music, that's familiar. You even have the used future, which you've seen before in Star Wars and Blade Runner. And then it got weird.
It's not a future. Well, I mean, it's not the future, but it's not a completely alien aesthetic of aliens. Do you know what I mean? It's like very much rooted in like common sci-fi, like Doctor Who, kind of Firefly a bit, that sort of thing. It's not.
You can see the rust on the metal. Something that turns a lot of people off sci-fi is that everything looks pristine and chrome.
Yes, I hate that.
Yeah, something that really grounds it you see the dirt.
With Joss Whedon's groundbreaking Firefly.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I'm actually very glad it didn't get another series.
The Alien film, that does it really well. It's the idea of, yes, it's sci-fi, yes, it's future, but because you can feel how it works, you are safe within it as an audience member.
Similar to kind of steampunky aesthetics, which also is rooted in the same idea, and you kind of see that in Iron Man as well.
Yes, definitely. So let's do the character rundown. Let's start at the beginning with Star-Lord's mum. Ooh, you thought I was going to get Star-Lord, didn't you?
Great, isn't she? Although there is a disturbing bit at the end, which, because I study this kind of stuff, I immediately was like, why the fuck have they equated his girlfriend with his mum? And unfortunately, this is what I have to study on a day-to-day basis. So
that is quite unfortunate.
We do a lot of Freud.
So let's not stick on that bit. Let's just talk about her dying of cancer. Much better.
Oh yes, the woman die.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
So how does this movie open? Like it's before the Marvel logo, and I think that's really distinct.
All the Earth stuff is very. It's set in. Oh, actually, the aesthetic of the Earth stuff is very much like kind of how we now look at the 80s aesthetic. You kind of see it with Stranger Things, which is 70s, isn't it? But you know, whatever. It's very much like the yellows and like, you know, a very nostalgic kind of feel onto it.
Definitely.
And I think that is so rooted in our collective consciousness that it makes the transition into elsewhere a lot easier. Because we're used to films from like, you know, that is and stuff that's kind of set in the 80s. E.T., that sort of thing is like a abduction. Well, not abduction. This is like the reverse of E.T.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're used to this as like a genre because it's
when Peter Quill is kidnapped is like the beginning of the days of sci-fi becoming a massive thing for the movie industry.
Yeah. I suppose a good comparison would be to Thor. So with Thor, the thing that connects it to what we know as the Marvel Universe is there's these people out there,
Yeah.
and one of them gets dropped onto Earth, and then we spend a lot of time with that.
It's a reverse of Thor.
Yeah. So it's the fish out of water storyline, but this time we see our world, our safe, comfortable. Oh, he's been abducted. Let's go and see where he's gone.
Yeah.
And then
Cool.
we see, earlier we see young Peter Quill crying because Mama Quill has died. That is quite the opening for one of these movies. That's not what we expected. It's not what we saw in the trailers, and it hits us emotionally. It's like the opening of Up from Disney.
Mm-hmm. This is one of those movies, which is very common in Marvel, where the trailer is completely different to what happens. The trailer presents like the five of them as already a set up team. So we're like, we expect to enter as like an Avengers 2 sort of situation, except it's in space, but we expect it to be established. And then they all just kind of bumble into each other. And I loved it.
Yeah.
And also the trailers, the trailers set themselves, the trailers don't seem to distinguish a clear villain to me. I haven't watched them recently.
I haven't seen them recently, but I don't believe so.
I don't remember that they show Rohan or anyone. Ronan. I think Karen Gillan is featured briefly, but like there's the villain. It seems to be a much more serious movie than the trailers present it as a much more serious movie.
The trailers present it as they're all in prison, now they break out of prison.
And they're the villains themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're the anti-heroes.
Yeah. So, we start off with the emotional core of the movie, and that is Peter Quill, at a young age, goes through trauma and is then taken off of Earth so he can't deal with it.
Yeah, so he has unfinished business.
People have issues. People have unfinished business, as you say, and that is definitely the core of this movie. Then we cut 30 years into the future, which is now modern day, and he's on the planet and he's dancing, and what an iconic opening.
It's his behavior is so human. It's what really strikes me is like all the daties, 80s references, and just like his general sense of humor and stuff is very kind of how I've said before that I love these movies because of how they root their humor and how the humor works within these movies, and it feels very natural in terms of reactions, and the people who write it clearly have like a good grasp on that. And you see yourself in Peter Quill. You're like, oh yeah, if I was abducted, I too would still be listening to jammy 80s hits.
Yeah.
And then, he's not
grown up.
No, but he's also not an unbelievable character either.
Yeah.
He's
definitely
believable in that aspect because he's not grown up.
Yeah.
I feel like if they hadn't cast Chris Pratt, that wouldn't have gone as well.
Oh, easily.
Chris Pratt, brilliant.
Perfect actor for the part.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think, where should I take this? So let's just do Star-Lord as a main character and as the hero of the piece. He's the first non-superhero because he's not exceptional in his own world.
Okay, wait, are we saying then that, he is our leading character, but are we saying he is the leader of this franchise? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So he is the first character to lead the franchise to lead a franchise who does not have the titular film named after him.
Yes.
Which I think is significant. This is clearly supposed to be like a group thing, and we see that one got it, Galaxy 2. But yes, as a central character, he gives me distinctly Tony Stark vibes, but also not, because like kind of an ungrown up person, but trying, and also, he's different, I would say, but also not really that different either.
Familiar, but it still pushes things. And it's very interesting because you have again, he's almost a Paragon character, and I've recently done a lot of reading into Paragon, so I'm kind of obsessed with them right now. But he's the one who brings the team together. He's the one that is the ideally the leader of the team in his own mind, and
Gamora is in charge. We all know it.
yeah, exactly. But he's the one who, in a traditional storyline, would just be the knight in shining armor. That's what he sees himself as. He's the Kevin Bacon in, what was it, Dirty Dancing? Or no, Footloose. I always anyway. And so to have him be the audience surrogate character for this world is really interesting, because usually you'd have a sidekick kind of character be the Arthur Dent. But in this case, he is, and that's quite strange.
Yeah, but he also kind of is, because he's not, in terms of like Gamora's world and the world they're being introduced to, he very much is not like a part of that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so it takes away from, and very intentionally so, it takes away from him being the hero.
Yes.
Which is something the comics didn't do. His original comics interpretation is just, he's the hero. He's a classic hero guy. Yeah.
And everyone knows it.
Yeah.
I found it so funny when no one knew who he was. That was great. Also, I'd like to say now, his jokes that are like 80s, and what he said about Footloose, I've never seen that movie. So this movie is funny on multiple levels for multiple audiences, because you've got like the older audience who are like, ha ha ha, that's a funny interpretation of that movie. And I'm just like, sticks up their ass.
But also it shows you that his references are alien to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Alien to them.
Yeah, and like they're also alien to the people he's delivering to them. So you've got like the audience and the audience and the audience, and it's just really good. And I think that's part of what the humor of this movie plays on very much. It's like a fish out of water situation for both us and them.
Yeah. Okay, so Star-Lord. In the same way that Captain America to Steve Rogers, what is Star-Lord to Peter Quill? Like, in terms of design, what do you think about him as a hero, as a character?
Star-Lord is who Peter Quill wishes he was.
Right.
What was that? Sorry, I missed it.
It's who he wishes he was.
Yeah.
It's like this idealized childhood version of a superhero that he's got in his head, and he's like, oh yeah, that's who I want to be when I grow up. But he's never grown up, and he's just playing at being this guy who's like a legendary outlaw or whatever, in the same way that I play at being characters on like Skyrim.
Yeah, right. And he's got
he's got his own game of D&D.
He's got the helmet that has its own cool face, and he's got the red coat, which is a cape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, his whole look is very like classic sci-fi, just different elements combined together.
Yeah.
He's Billy the Kid meets Flash Gordon. And I think that's really cool, and also it's very different from his comic book look, which I think for the first time is an incredible move on the part of the movie makers.
Yes.
And it really makes him distinct in our minds. When you think Star-Lord, you no longer think the tight blue jacket with a flame symbol on it and whatever. You now think the dirty red jacket, the weird music t-shirts, the belt that makes no sense. You know, it's Star-Lord. He's just a
I think if you met Star-Lord in real life, he'd be one of those guys who's 30 years old and still lives in his parents' basement.
Yeah.
And is actually a massive misogynist, but you know, in this context it works.
I feel like his outfit is like he went to like the space thrift store.
Yeah.
And
I feel like it gives off a very much of impression that I get of him as a person, as like someone who just picks things up that they love and sticks with it forever.
Definitely.
And everything else is like discardable, and we see that with his behavior with the girl on his ship, because she's just like, oh yeah, you're there.
Who, this is the first time I'll mention it. And it probably won't be the last, because James Gunn has a love of Easter eggs. Barit is one of the earliest Easter eggs in this movie, and she is, in comics canon, the princess of her own world.
Oh my god, why aren't we getting her story?
She's literally an alien princess, and so to have her serve the story purpose she does, is a quote-unquote hilarious joke.
I laughed so hard.
But it does definitely show the sort of the love of the original story, but also the discarding of it that James Gunn is going for.
I would say James Gunn is one of the only writers of these things to have actually read the comics.
Honestly, right?
And to have actually engaged with them on a critical level and gone, here's what I like, here's what I don't think will work. Here's like, how should we design the characters? Oh, yes, what do we think about this? Here's an Easter egg we can do. Whereas you've got people like whoever did the first Thor, fucking Gilderoy Lockhart, just going like, oh yeah, here's some Norse mythology Wikipedia. Here's like the Thor Wikipedia. Okay, bish bash bosh, done.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just like, no, this is not what's happening.
So,
but yeah, this movie shows a love of the comics.
Definitely. Let's do a brief little bit on Yondu as he appears at the beginning of this film.
An icon, a legend.
So Michael Rooker, first of all, his voice, his acting is just, he's nothing like the comic version.
But it's great.
So good. Just
I love this department.
As this father figure who's terrible, this kidnapper, but also the leader of these space pirates. It really sets the tone of who Star-Lord is in the context of this larger world. He's a nobody who thinks he's a somebody.
Yes.
And then Yondu is actually the somebody who used to be a nobody.
Yeah. And this is part of the reason why Peter Quill he's grown up in a lot of ways, but not emotionally, because I can't imagine that a ship full of people who appear to be played by male actors, quote me on that, is not exactly it does not look like an emotional environment. Like, it doesn't look like he'd have gone, oh, Dad, my mum died. You know, do you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't seem to have had any emotional development, although he's had, like, the physical training.
Yeah.
I'm too worried that Yondu's going to eat him.
Yeah, exactly. So Yondu, starting off.
Yondu is an icon.
Before he gets charged to his...
Okay.
Is he... Oh, are you back?
Oh, I'm here. Well...
Oh, Greg disappeared for a second, didn't he?
Oh, dear.
Oh.
Well, Greg is probably defending Yondu. Probably. He looks like he's about to sneeze. What do you think about Yondu?
I like him. He's fun. But I think... I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I said to Greg before I started the stream that I don't remember much of Guardians of the Galaxy because I watched it so long ago. But from what I remember, he was just like a fun character to be there where you're not rooting for him, but you don't really think he's that bad either.
Yeah, I think that he's one of the morally very flexible people that continues with this movie. It's like,
Greg, there's two Gregs.
There's two Gregs. Oh no.
You look like you're about to sneeze. Why is this?
Is my face moving? Oh no.
Oh no. I'm just screenshotting that for future use, thanks.
Just do that. Continue. Oh, he's gone. Am I here?
Bye, Greg.
Hello?
Okay, so would you like to talk about Yondu?
Am I back? Am I moving?
Yes.
Good. Okay. I think I'm pretty much done with Yondu right now. I was going to move on to Gamora.
Oh, good. Okay, we were like, what do we say about Yondu in this movie? Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Gamora is another... Oh, I love her, but also she is also basically Black Widow as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, isn't she like the first woman of colour to be cast as one of the main characters and she's painted head to toe?
I brought this up last week and no one believed me that this was definitely a thing Marvel have done, but it definitely is. Because Tessa Thompson is like the first woman of colour to be in the main series who's not painted.
Yeah. Is Greg frozen again? Oh no, he's
just bowing to our superior knowledge.
So, Gamora, I
She
believe
is significantly better than she is in the comics, however. Design-wise,
Yeah.
100%.
I have lots of interesting thoughts about this because we're pretty much introduced, aside from Drax, we're introduced to the key team in scene very early on where we're on Xandar. Star-Lord is trying to sell the orb, and then everyone sort of gathers together. We meet Rocket and Groot, and quickly Rocket and Groot are introduced so succinctly that you fall in love with them immediately.
I love them so much. Just like everything about their relationship was so good.
You get fully sold on these characters conceptually, their relationship. There's no doubt in your mind that these are good characters, which is incredibly impressive.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's like something about how they're presented.
Yeah.
Is really good.
And then we meet Gamora.
And it's
we've
not
had
clear
her
she's
tiny
good or
bit
evil.
with Gamora and Nebula talking to Thanos and the other, which is his actual name, that six-fingered guy who spoke to Loki in Avengers. His name is the Other.
The Other. I love the rocks. That man.
Yeah.
Not to bring back my own memes.
That's fine. He needs that tasty mineral.
He's a goat.
Crave that mineral. So we see that little bit where Nebula's like introduced as a villain. And then she's sent to take down Star-Lord, and we see that nice little interaction where her character and his play off each other. It's pretty good, but like it's not as strong as Rocket and Groot, especially design-wise.
I don't think Gamora's design is eye-catching enough. I don't feel like it's... You showed me the concept art of Gamora with like the head stuff. Oh, it was really good. I want her to have a cape.
Right.
And like a massive sword, whereas she's another... This is a problem Marvel have, is like female characters and weapons, in that they do not have any consistency, because Gamora has a gun in the next one, and it's a massive gun. And then like, because they're supposed to be like these characters who are like master assassins, who can like, you know, use any weapon, but a key aspect of superheroes is like having one distinguishable weapon.
Yeah.
So I would... But she is 100% better than in the comics, that design, because that's very bad.
Yeah, so to give a bit of an explanation for people who haven't seen these, and I urge you to just Google Gamora.
Google the word Gamora comic.
Yeah. So you've got 3 distinct outfits that she's worn. One of which is the one in the movies, which is essentially a Black Widow costume. It's just practical, quote unquote. Yeah, it's quote unquote practical.
James Gunn owes me £40.
Assassin costume with like weapon holsters, and it's not that flashy. And like, no, I'm not trying to discredit the costume designers, because they've done excellent work here. The body paint, the hair, and everything that's gone into crafting her character is meticulously planned. It's just at no point did the word superhero come into their mind.
No. I do love her pink bits at the end of her hair. That gives her like a really unique aspect, that like an individuality that she doesn't have in the comics, I don't think.
Yeah.
In terms of how she styles herself.
And
like
then sorry.
No, it just straight off distinguishes her from Nebula.
Yeah. And then in the comics, the classic ones, you have, and here's the interesting thing, you have what essentially amounts to an exotic bikini. And she has like yellow bits around her eyes, which is pretty cool. And then she has this green hooded fantasy cloak, like Aragorn style cloak, and a medieval sword. And you can see it in the concept art. They were toying with it. I see why they didn't go with it, because it's not the aesthetic they were going for.
Give her the sword.
Exactly. They gave her a sword, but it was this weird sci-fi folding out sword that didn't really look that good.
I love a fold out sword, but it's just not big enough.
And they don't give it enough sword, right? And then the modern comic outfit is essentially white battle armor, which is cool, but Valkyrie's got it. So
yeah,
big boob.
Big boob. So I say compromise, and also I'm ignoring the matching red outfits that they all have at the end of this movie, which are...
They're not matching, Greg. Hers has a fee cut. Why? No one else has one.
They're matching enough.
No, James Gunn owes me more money.
Okay. But I think genuinely, as much as it doesn't fit the aesthetic of this movie, that's the point. Is give her the practical outfit that she's got at the beginning of this movie, but also give her a medieval sword and a hooded cloak.
Yes.
Because
that would make her so much more spooky.
It makes her so much more spooky, and like you can argue that but she's an assassin, she's meant to just blend in. And it's like, yeah,
she's not blending in. She's got pink hair, you idiot.
Pink hair, green skin on a planet of people. Like the Kree are explicitly racist to green skinned people. That's one of their biggest. They're at war.
Yeah, this doesn't work.
There's just a lot that doesn't make sense. And give this cloak, because it gives her some personality. It sets her up as a non-Black Widow character. It sets her up as a fantasy-style rogue.
Mm.
And that makes her stand out from the crowd, and it also just gives her some damn personality.
Yeah. I mean, she has personality. It's just the same one Black Widow has, which seems to be kind of like, oh, you're an assassin and adaptable, and also you'll never feel love because you're a woman, and that's the only way we can give you personality is through love.
Yeah.
Honestly, same though. It's a big mood, but at the same time, like, give these women what they deserve.
Yeah. And then, like, what was given to her? That fight scene that she has with Quill, she proves her worth. Her dynamic with the rest of them starts to play off well. When she's imprisoned, we see how the prisoners treat her. Like, she's not written poorly.
I'd have liked to see more female prisoners.
Yeah,
Not
that's
enough.
true.
More women in prison, please.
Definitely. I did like the woman who... I did like the woman who was on, like, the holophone to her family. Yeah. That was cool.
Great.
Yeah, one woman allowed.
One woman who cares about her family.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gamora's
breaking.
She is... I'm trying to be serious here.
Sorry.
She isn't written poorly. She's just written simply.
Yes.
I think that's the key concept.
James Gunn has fallen into Joss Whedon trap of going, oh yes, the woman's character is that they are a woman.
I do want to mention...
But they stab.
James Gunn wasn't the lead writer on this film. He definitely did a lot with the script, but the lead writer was a woman.
I like to blame directors for things.
That's fine, but the lead writer was a woman. Just saying. Not saying like, oh, it's a woman, it can't be bad, but...
This is not true. Things written by women can be very bad.
Yeah.
And problematic.
However, a lot of people credit James Gunn where he shouldn't be credited here. So, just saying.
Okay, so then again, this leads into questions of how much of the script made it onto the screen, how much, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Whatever. Anyway, but I would say also she's clearly done her reading as well of the comics. Gamora in the comics, for me, is not like hugely standout either. Like, she's mostly a story-driven character as opposed to a personality-driven one. And because I mean, at least she doesn't fall into the trap of being the heart and soul of like the Guardians of the Galaxy, but at the same time, she's kind of left as like this cold character, very much from what I've read.
Yeah, very much so.
And I do think that they successfully do give her some life in this, especially by her relationship with Nebula and her relationship with Peter Quill.
Yeah.
But I feel like without the relationship with Quill, she's like very not interesting enough, and I presume that's why they made them have a relationship.
Yeah, I do
that out.
Like how she functions as the straight man to Peter Quill's funny man in the comedy duo theory. And also their romance, whilst they're in romance, it's the best like we can get.
It's the best executed of all the shitty Marvel romances.
Yeah. But also the fact that it's not a will they, won't they. It's they want to, but they shouldn't, and they know that, and they're not going to.
And I just... Yeah.
And it ties in with the main theme of this movie, which James Gunn has said is getting over your trauma by learning to love other people.
Yeah.
And trust other people. Because every single one of them has trust issues on the wazoo. Yeah. Amberine, do you have any thoughts on Gamora's character?
I think she's so quiet compared to the others that if she was surrounded by different people, maybe she wouldn't seem so bland. But because everyone is so loud all the time, even like Drax, when he says stuff, it's very definitive. He says it in a very distinct kind of way. It means she seems quite stayed into the background.
Yeah.
And once again, the problem here is the same problem with Avengers, is the fact that we only have one woman on this team. One person who is clearly labelled as female / played by an actress. Well, I say actor for everyone, but played by a female actor. So, Groot, presumably, trees don't do gender.
Yeah, Groot has he pronouns, but
they use he pronouns instead of they. So, presumably, Groot chooses to exhibit as male. Or whatever. This is just or, as sometimes Google Translate does when you have pronouns that don't actually mean male or female, they just are general pronouns, like in Turkish. Google Translate will translate it as male.
Yeah, I believe
so presumably
species is single sex, and therefore,
but it is voiced by a male actor.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we had, again, this is the same issue with Avengers. If we had Janet Van Dyne in Avengers, then I'd be much more sold on Black Widow's like cold portrayal. Here, if we had, I want Angela. Give me my wife. You can't have Angela though. See, if we had another female character, this would work better.
The thing, all of the, as far as I'm aware, I am not well versed on Guardians.
No, me neither.
But the key ones are Nebula and Gamora.
Who aren't siblings in the comics?
No. Mantis, who we get in Guardians 2. And
finally.
Moondragon, who I believe will be in Guardians 3.
This is my issue, is the fact that they, in a lot of these type of films, they choose to establish the male team as like the groundwork and then introduce female characters as they go. Whereas what I would prefer is like if we could introduce a mixed bunch to start with.
Yeah.
And then
the
that would
problem
make
with Moondragon is you could say, oh, let's bring Moondragon in. Moondragon is Drax's daughter.
Oh no. This is gonna go so wrong.
And logically, you can't just put Moondragon in the first movie when Drax is there.
I mean,
we could have got a Lady Nova be on the team, but that's like that changes the entire.
The princess could have been there.
Brie, imagine if
get her arrested at the same time, and then she's just like, "Oh, by the way, my mum is the queen of that planet." Okay, I think Mantis should have been introduced in this film,
right?
Also because there's a lot going on in the next film, and I feel like if we had Mantis here, although I'm not sure how she'd fit into the renegade narrative they have going on, but they could meet her at the Grandmaster's. No, fucking collector's thing. I'm tired.
It's fine.
I spent I spend most of these live streams trying to restructure these films.
Pretty much.
Okay, moving on.
It's very difficult due to the source material to do anything.
Whacked.
Yeah, exactly. Due to the source material being written as pulp fiction, Jim I forgot his gosh darn name now. Flash Gordon style. Jim Gordon, that's Batman.
Jim Gordon.
Flash
that's
Gordon
not Batman.
Jim Gordon is
No. I thought you meant.
Oh no.
He was Batman. Imagine James Gordon as Batman. Okay, brilliant. That set me up for the evening.
So, yeah, Flash Gordon style, which was just a bunch of men. Most of them, I think, were British, actually. For Guardians.
Well, that's your problem right there, isn't it?
Yeah, right. British men. A lot of men just writing sci-fi based on sci-fi that they'd read that was heavily racist and misogynistic. It's just a bad pot of oil to mix together. Anyway, the movie we have Gamora, And Nebula. Nebula's kind of in this movie. What do we think about her?
Prepare yourselves, kiddies. Okay, so I think this is my key are all perform similar functions, and Nebula's backstory here relies heavily on the nuances of it, at least rely heavily on you understanding Bucky and Loki's narratives and applying that to her relationship with Gamora. So it's not presented as particularly complicated. However, we give it gravitas based on the fact that like Bucky and Steve have a complicated relationship and they have an almost sibling-like relationship as well. Some people see that as some people see it as romantic. Same with Thor and Loki. And also there's the adoption thing here as well in play. So I think that Nebula, a lot of her back, because this could be a movie equally about like her and Gamora divert her like going. I mean, it kind of is, because it is kind of a diverting movie for them, but in a way that this would be the central narrative if it was Gamora's film. It would be about them.
Easily,
in the same way that it's like Steve and Bucky, Thor and Loki. So I think it relies heavily on kind of you're already understanding these kinds of narratives, which is kind of sexist that they don't bother to do the whole thing here. Also, we have visual similarities as well. They all fall off shit, willingly or unwillingly in some cases. We have like physical similarities between Loki and Nebula in terms that they're both blue, connections with Thanos as well. Loki and Bucky are also connected in terms of physicality and like fighting style. They're also all kind of connected as well. Also, we have in terms of kind of, God, where have I gone with this? Nebula, you know, she deliberately falls off to escape Gamora, and Gamora is like physically distressed, but we don't have very much of their backstory. But like, if you've seen Thor, you can kind of apply a similar situation. So like, we assume that at one point they did love each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also she's not a main villain, and she gets a redemption arc, which Loki and Bucky also do. They're not primary villains, they're secondary villains.
Definitely. Ambry, do you have anything to add on Nebula?
Well, with what you were saying, Abby, I think like the bit that they throw in Guardians 2 about their backstory could have fit in the first one and would have just helped flesh it out. Because if you just know that they had to fight all the time in order to not be changed, you'd be like, well, shit, son. Yeah, that's like, because obviously, like, you have Loki and Thor that are siblings, but they have never had to fight each other in order to like be considered worthy or whatever.
They emotionally fight each other for Odin's love. Who's too invested in Thor? It's me. Don't worry.
I have two, don't worry about it. And yeah, so like if they'd thrown that in earlier, but then I guess they put it in the second one to have her redemption there. But yeah, it felt like a really long drawn out story between the two, so they could have just thrown it all into the first one.
Especially with Nebula's connective like ideas with Ronan as the two villains of the piece is weird.
Yeah.
How is she really connected to Ronan?
I mean, the guy at the start, when Gamora's arrested, is like, oh yeah, Thanos lent Gamora and Nebula out of Ronan. Oh yeah, you can just lend women. Anyway, sorry, that's not a very good impression. But yeah, that's how they are supposed, and they're also both blue. If that helps anyone. But I don't. If you start unpacking the story here, I'm kind of like, why does Thanos give a shit if Ronan destroys the galaxy? Like, why doesn't he just have Nebula take the thing to him straight away? Oh no, wait, she's gonna, and then she doesn't because she's like, oh, I hate you, Dad, lol. She has a mini rebellion.
Motivation in this film is the key problem. Motivation of the villains. It spends a lot of time focusing on the heroes, and then the villains get their motivation. It's just delivered via monologue.
Yeah.
So Ronan has a really quite cool intro scene where he gets like dressed and painted up because he's a religious zealot. It's really cool, but his monologues being delivered over the top of it. So you have to pay attention to his motivation for being a villain and his status within society and the overarching Kree-Xandar war all at the same time, and it just gets really mangled.
Yeah, especially since this is presented as like a funny film that you don't need to pay loads of attention to. Whereas there's also tons of Easter eggs.
Definitely.
Thanos here also has a motivation issue in that, I mean, I get that he wants the stone from a buyer, and then this is the same issue we have in Avengers, is that basically he kind of goes, oh yeah, I'll send my most important assassin kids off to get this stone for me. They won't betray me. And then we never see him actually being active in any way, which is why I'm quite excited about Infinity War. But the same thing happens in Avengers. It's like, he's like, oh yes, Loki, take this stone. You can use this. I won't tell you it's an Infinity Stone. We'll make the audience think it's the same as the Tesseract. And go and get the other stone for me. Great. And you can have Earth. And we just don't see him being proactive in any way, which does actually, now I'm talking about this, is quite good, because he seems like a great chess master who's always losing.
Yeah, it's one of those really stupid things where the writer's going like, okay, so
we've got to put Thanos in.
Yeah, he's doing all this cool stuff. He's sending people down. You're really scared of him because you've never seen him. But also he just keeps losing.
Yeah, I don't understand why I don't think his inclusion is actually necessary in this film. Like, we could have Gamora and Nebula. They could still be the adoptive children of Thanos. But that could be revealed at the end.
Yeah. So the thing I do want to talk about, and this is very brief because I was going to save this for some sort of theories video, but
oh, we did one. Yes.
You just described Gamora and Nebula as the children of Thanos.
I know. That's not correct.
No, it is correct. There's the exact words from the movie. In Infinity War, we are being introduced to a bunch of new characters described exactly as the children of Thanos.
I thought we were getting the Black Order.
They are being renamed to the children of Thanos.
No, I love the Black Order. Did you see that screenshot, just really quickly, of Black Widow? Like,
yeah, right.
Sorry,
so they might be called the Black Order in the movie as well. However,
let's hope so.
Yeah, connecting tissue that they're called the Children of Thanos. And I was talking to Emma about this, about how the 4 sub-boss villains in Infinity War, we have 3 men and 1 woman.
Of course we do.
If you add Gamora and Nebula with my weird hand gestures,
we have, what's that number, Greg?
That is 6. 6 children of Thanos, 3 men, 3 women. It adds a level of backstory through implication to Gamora and Nebula. Total theory right now.
This makes sense in the context of the Black Order.
Yeah.
Especially if we're not going to go deep into the lore of the Black Order, which I presume we're not going to.
I really doubt so.
The movie will be like 20 years long if we do that.
Yeah. So I think that would be really interesting to have. It does retroactively add to Gamora and Nebula's relationship if they have some other siblings.
Yeah, they do, because Nebula says so in this movie.
Yeah.
Specifically, she's like, of all our siblings, I hated you the least. Oh, that's so cute.
I think that's really interesting if it proves.
Yeah. I'm still very interested in what Nebula's role in Infinity War will be, because like Loki, we've only seen one scene from her, and I'm just like, oh god.
Yeah.
They're central characters.
Yeah. So, in the interest of briefness, let's rattle through some more characters. Rocket and Groot. How do we think they're done in this movie? Because they've been talked to death by other people.
Fine.
I feel, yeah. I don't have much context in terms of comics, but I love them too. They're great. I like how Groot's done, and I like that Raccoon is kind of space booky. But
yeah, literally all you need to know in terms of like comic book stuff with these 2 characters, the only things that really changed is now Groot used to be a lot more scary. He was genuinely just a mercenary, and Rocket used to have a Cockney accent.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reasoning for this was the character was created because the writer who made him, his name escapes me, he listened to the Beatles song Rocky Raccoon
Legend.
and thought, "Gah, there you go. There's an idea." And apparently this writer then didn't know that Liverpool was a thing, so he then gave Rocket a Cockney accent instead.
I wish Liverpool wasn't a thing.
Imagine Rocket Raccoon with a
friend is
Liverpudlian accent.
He'd be going around calling like McDonald's the Golden Arches and stuff like that. It'd be great.
Oh. I can't even do an impression. That's just too much for me.
I just refuse. What I do like about Rocket is we do get some elements of like body horror.
Mm-hmm.
And alternative bodies, and we get this with Nebula as well, is the fusion of technology and the body, and also some questions about consciousness that aren't really explored, but the themes are there and they're quite solid in that, like, you know, you can draw it out. It doesn't detract from the main storyline, and both he and Gamora are like physically changed by technology and have had like basically experiments done on them, and Groot is the same, and because, like, you know, I mean, he's a tree. Just saying. And like we just have like a lot of people with kind of traumatic physical things in their past as well, because Drax, like, you know, his family are dead, so presumably he was like fighting. I just say now, I hate the trope of like, oh, the man, he lost his wife and his daughter. Now he is on rampage. No, sort it out. Go to therapy. Stop, or even better, writers, stop killing off women and kids. They're supposed to be first to be saved. Yeah,
Maybe,
we have a
but
lot of themes
that
going on.
idea was sexist as well. How can this be?
I know, it's almost like there's two things with sexism, isn't it? Wow. I should really have a career as a comedian, frankly.
Dear Lord. Who else can we move on to? There's a lot of characters in this piece. Let's just talk about the Nova Corps as a whole. The idea that they represent and what we think about that.
Super quick, back to my casual exceptionalism thing that I continue to go on about. There are females in this army. And I'm happy about it. Thanks. Good job. Well done to whoever did the casting for this. Also, just nice, generally lots of women around. Good job. Well done.
Yeah.
More of them in the main team. Maybe some more in Yondu's crew would be nice.
Yeah. So yeah, what do you think of the Nova?
Space.
Ambreen, do you want to kick this off, or are you chatting? Ibby, do you want to? Ambreen, hi. Yeah, Nova. What do you think about them?
I was trying to remember anything about them. All I can remember is what they look like vaguely.
Nice.
Aren't they just white people?
Fairly indicative. There's some aliens in there.
Yeah, but I'm really confused by this movie because I don't get why Ronan hates them.
Right.
Like, I mean, I understand.
Quick rundown.
I know, but
Okay.
I know on an intellectual level.
Oh, but you don't feel
the movie doesn't feel it for me.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is a lot of my issues, to be honest. Is just like, you know, they're like, oh yeah, I hate them, and I'm just like, why? I mean, he tells us, but I just don't see them doing any of that.
Right, I get you.
I'd like to see a bit of the woman who leads the military, great. I'd like to see a few more scenes with her being a bit like, let's go hammer some other planets. I don't know.
Let's go hammer those planets.
Look, they clearly have to be the good guys, which is what makes it confusing.
Right.
Because it makes it a very black and white situation in which you have a lot of morally ambiguous characters.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you tried to make it more morally ambiguous, you'd be confusing things even more.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you'd have like morally ambiguous characters and a morally ambiguous situation, and everyone would just be going, "Oh my god, what do we do?"
I do think that the iconography of the Nova Corps are pretty good. The idea that they're all stars and they're an intergalactic police force. So it's just the idea of in the vast nothingness, there's an army of stars is pretty iconic.
Why are they all white?
Yeah.
These are continued questions that we just have.
Yeah.
have women in the army and one ethnically ambiguous woman who is an assistant.
I do like the final battle scene with the Dark Aster, which is Ronan's ship coming crashing to Earth, to Xandar, not Earth, and then the Nova Corps form the shield. It's really good visual language in this fight. Of they are a protective force, and the Dark Aster are destructive. And then you've got the really cool Space Invaders reference where they all go down and shoot up at the spaceships.
Oh yes, so good.
So yeah, in terms of visual battle and iconography, the Nova Corps are really good. I think they could have developed them a little bit more, especially if they are planning on introducing a Nova superhero in the future. Who knows? That's whatever.
This depends on where everything goes.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Is there anyone else I've really forgotten? Because there's a lot of minor characters, but majorly Drax is Drax. Sorry, Amarine, what was that?
Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn. Yep, he exists.
I mean, I've given my opinions about Drax, so
yeah. I mean, Guardians 2 is more Drax's movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
I wish
Drax
Mantis
is-
was in this movie because he doesn't. What I do like about him is the fact that he's like a front force guy, but he's also like a walking thesaurus, which makes it really like there's like more
yeah,
words
I agree.
for these guys. There's more going on with him.
Yeah.
You know,
He's just got some uniqueness to him, right?
yes.
He stands out even when he doesn't have much of an arc. I like how a lot of this movie would rely on coincidence of like, oh no, the bad guys have showed up, but it's a whole universe. Oh, Drax was stupid, so he actually called up the bad guy to challenge him to a fight. Gotcha.
I love it so much though.
Yeah, like it. He serves a lot of purpose without having too much attention, which is really, really good. I think that's nice. To sum up, what do we think this movie did for the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I think it made them more likely to like go further with stuff because they were like, oh shit, it works.
Yes, definitely.
And like not being like, oh, let's stick with the formula that we've got going.
Definitely. It branched things out in as much as Thor introduced the Asgardians and some other things. This movie was really the idea that, hey, there's stuff out there. It's not just guys on Earth. There's loads.
There are also white men in other places too. They are also called Chris. Yes, that's what the movie says.
I'm trying my best.
Okay, sorry.
No, don't apologise. You're genuinely calling out really valid criticisms.
I know. Of course I am. That's what I'm here for. Also, I would say this movie, in terms of like, it's just very different to anything we'd had before. And it kind of created its own space that since then kind of Thor has moved into. And also it gives us a lot of much needed backstory on the Infinity Stones, which we've kind of not covered because we've not talked about the Collector and the minor misogyny / racism going on over there.
Yeah, introducing the Collector as this universal entity in the Celestials and dropping these little things that
because also he appears at the end of Thor 2, which I always forget comes before this. But yes, his whole like explanation of the Infinity Stones was kind of sorely needed because everyone was like, oh, what the fuck are these then? This that makes it relevant to everything else that's happening, I think. Yeah. That's all I have to say.
Cool. I think that Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy at the same time, 2014 was a big year. Winter Soldier changed the direction of the Earth-based stuff. Guardians of the Galaxy opened our eyes to the cosmic stuff. And without these two movies doing what they did, we couldn't have Infinity War at all.
These two set up so much important background.
And if these had been failures, I don't know where we would have been.
Mhm.
Like,
I think these two movies set very much outside the comfort zone that they'd kind of established. I mean, even Avengers was mind-blowing, but Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 kind of fall back into the kind of like safe zone.
yeah,
And the fact that they were willing to go outside that with this movie and blow things open was just brilliant. Like, if these movies, if they'd been presented in like a safe way, it would have been very boring.
yeah.
It would be
They
like
like the
Justice League.
Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther of their time. Their time being 4 years ago, but Ragnarok
Like,
changed things tonally, which the Winter Soldier did, and then Black Panther changed things story-wise, just like Guardians of the Galaxy did.
yeah, those are like my 4, along with the Avengers, kind of my 5 must-see ones, as well as like Civil War for story purposes.
Yeah,
but those
definitely.
5 are like definitely the top in terms of enjoyment.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Very
everyone
much
would,
so.
most people would agree on that. I think
Yeah. Some people have
some people
slightly-
want Iron Man in there, but
Yeah, some people, and I've seen a couple of people be like, "Oh, I'm really impressed by Ant-Man," and I'm like, "Okay, you do you.
were you?
That's fine."
I was impressed by that scene where he goes, "I want your daddy. I want your daddy too." That's my favourite thing to ever happen. And also, oh, that Thomas the Tank Engine scene, that impressed me.
And I like Falcon was there.
Yeah, Falcon was there. And that guy who like explains stories, I want him to do a recap at the start of Infinity War.
Yeah.
Easily. So yeah, I think that these movies are incredibly important. They really nailed their characters with a couple of mild letdowns that weren't bad. They were just mediocre.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, they really changed things for the better. And if you're looking at a turning point for the MCU where it went from good to great, 2014 is the year.
And then 2015 is like,
2015 is a lot of fun.
we're going to have a long chat
But
about
we'll
that. I can
discuss
feel
that
it.
next time.
It's Age of Ultron is no longer on Netflix, so will I have seen it twice by the time we talk about it? Maybe not.
Maybe
Don't
not.
worry though, I'll still be very angry.
Good.
You can all prepare yourselves for when will the next live stream be, Greg?
I genuinely don't know. It should be maybe Sunday.
You
Hopefully
should change your Twitter name.
I should change my Twitter name. Thank you both for joining me. Do you want to plug any social media or anything that you like while you're here?
Follow me on Twitter for content exactly like this.
Follow me on Instagram, Amberine54, for some pretty photos.
Nice. Don't follow me because I'm useless. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching. And Marvel's pretty cool.
8 out of 10. Solid.
8 out of 10 dentists would recommend Marvel movies.
Yep, it really cheers up your plaque. Don't worry.
All right, and I'm stopping the broadcast.